The law does not require futility. It does not require that you do something which is against sense, which is against your own interest, which is futile and pointless. But that is what a young woman named Keelah Jackson has been told that she must do. She's been told by the woman, Jennifer, at City Court that to make the process begin to restore her driving privileges, as they're called, she has to do several things. Number one, a $200 deposit. Number two, she has to buy non-owner's vehicular insurance. And she estimates that that would be maybe $60, $80 a month. A woman now, Keelah Jackson, who does not own a car. And then there's another requirement to have this restricted driver's license, which she has a petition for, to be administered. She's on her deadline to have the license within 30 days, the Tennessee license within 30 days. But the problem is that she had a license 3 or 4 years ago now in Georgia, but she was in a traffic encounter, which, as many of them do, ended in personal disaster, financial personal disaster, effectively a civil death sentence on this woman of color. A man was in his car and was very violently ill, and she was in the seat to the right of him. He was having violent stomach problems in the car during movement. So she volunteered to take the wheel, trade places, and then there was the traffic encounter with the blue lights. She faced 4 charges, including no city tag, no proof of insurance, and two others with the fees of which and the fines of which have amounted to about $800. And then there was a problem with her Georgia driver's license being suspended. It was suspended. She did not know about that. So she had a criminal case in city court, which is a corporation court, and fines she couldn't afford, and she had her license in Georgia suspended. And that is the obstacle that she is facing, trying to have the restoration of a privilege. Now, you say, well, what's a privilege? A privilege is permission to do something which otherwise is illegal, okay? And we're told by everybody left and right that to exercise any of your rights, the right to vote, the right to go to church, the right for free expression, the right for artistic expression, the right to communicate, these rights are all called communication in the law. To do any of those rights, she has to go to state government and obtain a privilege. The privilege is the piece of magic plastic called a driver's license, and she does not have that. So this young woman, highly intelligent, a writer, she is a journalist, has been under this civil death sentence for 2 years. And she's being told by Ron Swafford's clerk, Jennifer, that, well, we hope that if you make these payments and get on the payment plan, that maybe it'll take, but there's only a hope, and there's no guarantee. And Keelah Jackson says, well, I've been invited onto the same treadmill to which I have been invited before. And, if you're like me, which she's a writer, she's like me, we have not silver in our pocket, but we have lint. And so she is not able to afford on the thin wages and the thin pay that she gets in that profession, and a part-time teaching gig, to satisfy the claims. And here now she's being invited to get on the treadmill again, with the threat as follows: if you can't make the payment in time, then all the money you've paid is forfeit. Now, when I heard that from her, I just simply looked agog. And we'll hear a little bit more about her. We'll also talk today with Lauren Turner, an entrepreneur who has a two-part business. Number one, on floor 2 of her shop, Airbnb, and on floor 423 St. Francis, a kind of high-end boutique for clothing. So we'll hear a woman who does not have the same problems that Keelah Jackson does. She has other, you might say, problems or matters with which to deal as an entrepreneur. But the idea that Keelah Jackson, you should read her petition for in city court for the restricted driver's license. That is in the statute. She looked it up and wrote a petition describing where she would go if Judge Sherry Patey would give her a restricted driver's license, order that it be given. And it's a 2-page document. I have a copy of it, and I will post it soon at Nuganomics.com. This young writer, Keelah Jackson, explains the perils of being a single woman relying on a bus. Right? If your means is public transportation as opposed to private travel, you become a customer and passenger of a bus system such as CARTA. You are vulnerable to, as she says, to voyeurs and predators. And so there would be a personal interest for her in obtaining a restricted driver's license. Also, there is that if she avoids the extremities of inclement weather, I think she says, then that maintains her good health, which allows her to be productive and creative all around the Chattanooga area, including Nashville and Knoxville. So she's pleading for this restricted license, and she says where she would go under terms of it. That would be work, and then she has a kind of open-ended request in her petition that I would be able to look for work more broadly than simply my assignments at the Chambliss Center for Children, where she teaches, and other places. She has some sports connections as well here in Chattanooga. And this is David Tulis. We're 92.7 FM. Where we argue for local economy and the free market, and really for people to identify arbitrary government and arbitrary policies. And I'm going to be going down to Court Clerk Swafford this afternoon after the program, and asking Keelah Jackson to go with me so that he can explain to me where this is in the statute. Because that is the question, Mr. Swafford and Judge Patey. Where in the statute does Keelah Jackson have to buy non-owner's vehicular insurance when she doesn't own a car? How does that? Where is that in the law? And this I'm doing because I want to understand how this works. Because Miss Jackson is a representative. She represents thousands of people in a like situation of all colors, right? All colors, all races. All levels of education. She is the representative. So if she is a writer, as a journalist, can understand how the system works, well, then she can tell other people about it. That's what we do here at Nuga Radio 92.7. We want people to think that they can overcome these obstacles, and they can be overcome. And I say I want to have the law book with me because many things that are policy are simply not lawful. I'll say it flat out. Many practices that are customary among state actors, whether clerks, judges, and the like, are simply not lawful. There's simply no warrant for them in the law. And that's simply what I plan to do. If we're going down in person to ask for the appointment, okay, that's the only reason we're going is to request in person an appointment to discuss the statute. And if Mr. Swafford is not available to discuss it this afternoon, well, then we will certainly come back because that's what I do, right? Life is show prep on the David Tulis Show. My life is hearing about people, learning about people, and meeting them. And you know, I'm always ready to meet with you, my listener, and I'll be available in public at the end of the week at two places. One is Panera Posse on Friday morning, very early at 6:30. I'm an early bird. I start reading law and the book of Deuteronomy at 4:30 or 5 every morning. Okay. And I do have something to say about the book of Deuteronomy, which I think is a wonderful and overlooked, amazing volume. But I'm also available Thursday night during the Gridiron Gang Show. Now, this is at the Starbucks at 10 North on North Shore. Keon Rose, Nick LaFew, and others, they broadcast live. And the talk, of course, is high school football. So you can stop by and listen to them talk about things about which I know absolutely nothing. and I'll just between you and me, I don't care about those things, but I do love being in the context of the radio. And I met a wonderful man, Calvin Davis, last Thursday. He and I had a wonderful chat. He actually is my listener. Okay, there's you, You're my listener. And then there's this other person who's a listener, Calvin Davis, a very refined man who loves sports. And he sat there and enjoyed the evening. And this is every Thursday evening from 7 to 9 p.m., the Gridiron Gang Show at Starbucks on 10 North Shore. And I'll be there, David Tulis. And so I want to hear about your problem. I want to hear what your woes are, and maybe just talking through your problems will solve them. Okay, and that's what I do. I just ask the dumb question. Okay, I ask the dumb question, and if I have a law book in my hand, my Title 55 volume, the questions get even better. Right, the dumber the question, the better. David Tulis, love your neighbor. 800-8949. Call me. Just call me. You can do that. I don't bite. Even people I might not really like, I don't bite them. I'm very gracious, and I want them to have their say, right? Even people who I theoretically would disagree with, who cares what my opinion is, right? Who cares? I might disagree with them, but I want them to have their say and to say it in the best way possible so that you, my listener, can make up your mind, right? It's informing you of the best of let's say two sides of a controversy. 800-8949, 800-8949, brought to you by Nuganomics.com. Now, just quickly, this whole question about travel and I it's called communication. I was reading some court cases in a brief Saturday from Dave Merlin at WeVGov, and he has a long treatment on this right to travel in Washington State. He's in Seattle, and is a jurist and a kind of a paralegal. Doesn't practice law, doesn't give legal advice, but he's a kind of a paralegal. We talk law a good bit, and he has citations about the right of travel. Just think about this. Keelah Jackson is a writer. Okay, so she's involved in the communications business, but moving your body from point A to point B is essentially the same thing. And the court cases, some of them are quite old, that predate the internal combustion engine. Talk about movement as communication, and I hadn't really thought about that since I'm assembling arguments for the political work, the groundwork I have to do for Title 55 political reform. It's a legal reform, but also political as well, because I'm trying to find one mayor to say, I'm going to obey the law. I'm going to stop my city from disobeying the law. I'm going to obey the law. And so we are going to bring relief to thousands and thousands of people in this city, and we will become a magnet because we will be from that perspective on that law, that abused law. We will be a haven, a city of refuge. Now, the idea of communication is free speech, right? So think about this. To do anything about, let's say you want to attend a Democratic Party function, or let's say you want to attend the party on the right, the party on the right, the conservative Republican Party. You want to go to a function. Well, that's communication. To get there, you have a right to get there. You have a right to be there, and you're doing it privately. You're not buying or selling any good or service or carrying anybody for hire to get there. So you have a right to be on the road as a matter of right. You have a property right in movement, in the free speech of your getting your lips, your gums, your molars, your incisors, your front teeth, which maybe you should do some flossing there. You get those front teeth and your lips to a particular venue where there may be a bit of bunting and maybe an American flag on the wall, right? And a podium, a person standing there about to give a speech about the great principles of that particular party, and so that is a form of communication. Just getting there is the communication, right? Getting there, whether your lips flap poignantly or emotively, or winningly, or if they're just silent and you're listening, right? Your ears are busy. That is communication. Just getting there across an avenue, an alley, a driveway, a boulevard, a state road, a county road, a public street. Those are communication, right? So movement is communication. Movement underlies all exercises of rights. And that's why Title 55 reform is something that I think you should think about. And follow our sponsor here. The David Tulis Show is sponsored by Nuganomics.com, the website for the man who matters. And I am trying to get an audience on this argument. There is a cause of action, though, a legal cause of action, which has already been established. Okay, it's been established by the date of my notifying particular municipal jurisdictions of the limits on the statute. It's called transportation administrative notice. But here we have Keelah Jackson as a writer, as a journalist, and communicating, and she can't communicate. She's told you cannot get into a car, put your hands on the steering wheel, shut the door behind on your left, put the key in the ignition, press the gas pedal with your nice sandal, and move the contraption out of the parking lot and down the road to the stoplight. It is illegal to do that. It is a crime to do that. And so Keelah Jackson, laboring under this impression, as she is trying to get a driver's license of a restricted sort. It's called a hardship license. And here now Judge Patey is saying, well, okay, you can have a driver's license, but you first have to get owner vehicle insurance. A woman who doesn't own a car, who uses public transportation, right? Paid service for hire by CARTA, and favors of others to get from place A to place B, and she walks 15 miles a week. That's a woman on the road, right? A woman on the side of the road walking because she is under a civil death sentence from our city and our courts, who are all of them effectively conspiring to deny her the exercise of her rights, the rights of communication, free movement, free travel, all the same. And when she is a soul, right? She is a soul, not a subject. And something to think about is this: that when you are on a road traveling, and the officer sees you, and he thinks that you've done something wrong, right? In his holy virtue, and he's gonna chase after you and stop you. You are a subject, but you are a subject on the land to misapplication of statute. But you are a soul if you are in maritime jurisdiction, oddly enough, and even in an airline, you are a soul, not a subject. So it's interesting how these abusive uses of law on the land where common law should reign. You are not a soul or a person or a human being. You are or an individual citizen. You are a subject. And I think that tells how far we have gotten. But the law does not require an absurdity. And this morning I've been looking through Title 5502 about this writer who has lint in her pocket, not jangling silver, as I do. As a poor editor and writer, the editor of Nuganomics.com, our sponsor. That's Nuganomics.com. And we're going to hear a little bit later more about Keelah. I had a chat with her this morning, and you can hear the her intelligence, and yet this deadness of soul that comes when your freedoms are taken from you by betrayal, by deceit, by effectively the kind of state extortion that Dave Merlin talks about. Now he's much more aggressive than I am. Much less patient, maybe because he's 60 and I'm still in my 50s. He refers to these as state crimes. They're extortion and the like. And I did read the Tennessee extortion statute, and I would say that it applies to anybody who deprives you of your rights by threat or force. So the question, if you're a free traveling person, you're an immigrant, let's say a poor immigrant going to the with your pickup truck loaded with brick down to the work site. And you are one who has a right to travel, and you're exercising that right, don't have a license or anything. The fact that you're stopped and charged, that is potentially a violation of the extortion statute. Now, the question is, would Neil Pinkston view it that way, or would Neil Pinkston just applaud the officer because Neil Pinkston alleges, as we have reported, that there is no constitutional right of travel? The right of travel, according to him, and according to court policy, which of course is not the law, it's just court opinion, and it's only half stated, is that travel is the right to move your domicile from one state to the other, and that's it. That's the policy, apart from the statute, and in fact apart from the legislative history of our transportation code, which I've given a fairly thorough review and transportation administrative notice. The number is 800-8949, 800-8949. In Memphis, there is a trial underway for police abuse. And guess what happened on the day the trial began? in Memphis. I'm reading from The Guardian, which is an English newspaper. So an English newspaper is covering how there is 50 heavily armed officers, local police, sheriff's deputies, and other agencies had a raid on 2 houses. Of whom? Well, houses of the plaintiffs in the police abuse case where there's been surveillance of Black Lives Matter. Now, you may not care about Black Lives Matter, but I think you might listen to care about the principle of using departmental resources, departmental threats, and gangland style operations. That's what seems to be going on in Memphis. It wouldn't happen here because we have Chief David Roddy at the helm. He would never, ever, ever allow that. So he can feel relieved. David Toulis.
3, 2, 1.
Chattanooga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4. 92.7 FM's news now.
Chattanooga police say a man shot in the shoulder while sitting in his car early Sunday morning. CPD says officers responded to reports of shots fired on the 2000 block of Rawlings